It's a very warm welcome indeed to the Global Business Podcast today to Mr. Drew Gerber. Drew, how are you today?
I am amazing, thank you.
You are
Pleasure to be
amazing.
here.
I love that word. I love
I
that word.
really am amazing. At least that's what most people say.
It is, and it's great, isn't it? Because I think when you speak to someone and you get someone responding like that, you actually immediately feel a little bit more upbeat. I do anyway, because if people are amazing, that means they've got something amazing to share with us. So we're going to find out what amazing things you've got to share with us today, Drew. But
Brilliant.
before we get there, I want you to tell everybody whereabouts in the world you are today. You don't have to give us your street address, but just tell us what city and country you're in.
So I am in the most beautiful city in the world, Budapest, Hungary. Yeah, it is my favorite. I've lived here for 9 years now.
Oh wow, fantastic!
Yeah,
What
yeah.
brought you to Budapest?
It was a combination of reality show addiction and frequent flyer miles.
Okay, fantastic! What a great combination.
It, my favorite, right? Traveling and reality shows.
There you go. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I was just telling you off air that I have a travel podcast, and a lot of those listeners have transferred over to the business podcast. So we're talking to a lot of that audience. Tell us a couple of tricks about Budapest in terms of what's so great to see if they come and visit Budapest.
Everything. I think that Budapest is not only a great place to travel to. I mean, the people, the architecture, the art, the food. It's just really exquisite. But it's also an amazing place to live. It's one of the most livable cities I've ever been to in the world because the public transportation is amazing. The cost of living is really great, and it's easy to navigate
Mm,
here.
mm. Where were you
Yeah.
before you went to Budapest?
We were actually splitting our time between Atlanta, Georgia, the mountains, Smoky Mountains in North Carolina, and Hilton Head Island. So we were splitting our time, and yeah, we decided we wanted to kind of live in Europe. So
There you are.
we jumped. Here we are. Yes.
I love Budapest. I do have trouble getting myself out of the Turkish baths though when I go there because it's just such a phenomenal place to go and relax, isn't it?
I think it's one of the most relaxing places in the world to just sit there and hang out in the hot water and just chill out. And they're beautiful.
Yeah,
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 they're
exactly. Okay,
yeah.
so we've done our job on behalf of the Budapest tourism industry today. So they'll be flooded when people
Yay!
can start traveling properly again. So there we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, one of the things that I do on my podcast show is I always offer my guest the opportunity to dedicate the show to someone special in their life. So who would you like to dedicate your episode to today?
Oh my God, I love that. I would love to dedicate this to my parents,
Oh, your parents.
my mother and my father. Yeah, because I've just, they're extraordinary. They're extraordinary human beings, and they made me who they still are juvenile delinquents, but they're still extraordinary. I tried to raise them the best I could, but I kind of have failed, so they're still juvenile delinquents. But I love them, and I'm very grateful for them.
And whereabouts are they based at the moment?
They're in Utah, Salt
Utah.
Lake City, Utah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Fantastic.
from Utah.
Well, it
Yeah.
won't be too many months away when they're going to get out the winter clothes again and start wrapping up to be warm, eh?
Right, yeah, they live right on the Wasatch Mountains. So yes, they are going to be seeing snow, although it's like 100 now, but snow soon.
Well,
Yeah,
listen, that's a beautiful dedication to them, and you're going to have to make sure that they sit down and watch their son perform on this podcast show, yeah? So.
they watch everything I do. I'm an only child, and I think that says it all.
Now, look, I was really excited to have a chat with you today on a number of reasons because I think you're in a very exciting industry given the times that we're in at the moment. But before we start talking about that, I want to talk about your vast amount of experience in the PR industry, and you've been in the game for 30 years. So tell us quickly what's changed over the last 3 decades in the PR industry. What have been the major changes?
Mm. Well, I love it. Michelle, my business partner, and co-owner, she always says she's seen, PR transition from typewriter to Twitter. So it's completely a different world. It used to be, the number of outlets were probably about 1% that they are now. And they were all traditional. It was television, which in the United States we had four channels. And then you had your major newspapers and some radio shows, and that was basically it. Well, now, the venues are millions and millions. And I think that more and more that it is now, it's all an online game.
Mm.
It's all on demand. And I think we're seeing more and more. And I think that the COVID and everything definitely has accelerated that dramatically. Yeah.
Mm. What made you get into PR? Was it a dream industry that you wanted to get into when you were a young guy?
No, my degree's in chemical engineering.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So actually, what had me get into it is I wanted to start my own business, and I wanted to get up underneath those people that were committed to making a difference and help them to make a difference and change the world. And it was really my business partner in a conversation with her that when she started to tell me about what PR does and how it shifts the conversation, I was like, that's really what I want to do. So it was really, that's what led me to PR, the universe.
The universe. What a great story. What was, so let's go back to the chemical engineering. What was the dream job back then? Did you have your eye on something that you specifically wanted to do with that skill?
No, it's all Mrs. Yaney's fault from high school. So I was sitting in chemistry class in high school, and I actually really loved chemistry. And I went up to her after class and I said, I really love chemistry. She said, I think I'm going to become a chemist. She's like, oh, Lord. She said, do not become a chemist. They make no money. Become a chemical engineer. And so she's like, so literally that's why I signed up to be a chemical engineer, because it was the highest paid BS that you could get. I never used it a day. Not one day did I ever use that.
Right.
My poor parents invested so much money, and not one day was I a chemical engineer. Because it wasn't until I really was well into my education that I figured out what they would be doing, and I'm like, I have no interest in it.
I wonder, as a side order, how many people are sitting out there watching or listening to this and thinking, well, I did exactly the same with my degree. I've never used it. It's been completely irrelevant for most of my life. Why did I do it?
Yeah. Well, I think that, I think we're finding a lot of our systems are bankrupt. And I think education is one of those things that the model is kind of bankrupt. And I think that we need to rethink the way that that we do education, and that we help and support people to find their passion. Like, I'm sure you've experienced that too in your life, many iterations to get to finding your passion.
Yeah, true story. Yeah. So for someone out there today who's on that journey of perhaps starting a business up, what would you give them as a couple of pieces of advice from a man of wisdom who's been there over a long period of time and starting and running a business?
Enjoy the journey. I think that that's the most important thing that I've gotten, and know when enough is enough. I think that, it's taken me a long time to get to this place where I really woke up and was like, you know what, I have enough. I don't need any more. And that was the case probably 20 years ago. I had enough. But I kept driving more. And that actually led to a lot of stress and anxiety and not really enjoying the process.
Really great sharing. So what do you think it was in you that, and I'm not being judgmental when I ask you this question, I'm really interested to know, what was it 20 years ago that didn't allow you to do that? Why were you committed to keep on pushing as you have been?
I think a lot of society buys into this whole conversation about abundance. You want to live the abundant life, and you get wrapped up into every image, and you see the Facebook life, and so there's never enough. You're never satiated. Now, it wasn't that I wasn't happy and I wasn't satiated, and I was for the most part very awake. But where I am now is this whole other level called, look, unless we wake up and realize that we have enough on the planet, our planet is doomed. It is that conversation that has given us the world that we currently have. And unless we interrupt that, we're not going to have a world that really works for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm really interested in interrupting. And I'm in a great place because PR marketing is one of the places that drives that insufficiency and feeling not enough.
Really good
Yeah.
points. Really good points.
Yeah.
Do you think it's easier or more difficult to start a business today than it was back when you started yours?
I think it's in some ways it's actually easier, and in some ways it's more difficult. It's more easy for sure with the technology. My gosh, technology makes it so easy to create content, to do commerce, I mean, it makes it very easy to actually set up a business, but there's also a lot of competition. When we started our company, 20 years ago, we were actually featured on major news outlets because we were a virtual company. Like people hadn't heard, like it was this revolutionary thing, like a virtual company. What's that? And we're like, well, yeah, because we want to be able to work from anywhere. We knew that even back then. But now people can work from home, and it's easier than ever to start a business. But that means there's a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
What's
yeah.
in, what? So, what's the name of your business? Let's tell everybody the name of the company.
It's Wasabi Publicity.
Great name. Where did it come from? Where did that name come
Michelle.
from?
Michelle, she's brilliant. My business partner, she's brilliant. So we decided that we wanted to go into business, and she was sitting with a friend coming up. They were brainstorming names. Wasn't there, and she's like, "What's that green stuff that you eat with sushi?" Remember, 20 years ago in the States, sushi was a new thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So she was at a place that is like it's called Whole Foods. It's a upscale market. I know people from all over the world. Listen, so I hesitate to mention American brands, but it's an upscale brand where they sell sushi. She's like, "What's that green stuff?" Her friend said, "I don't know." So she went back to the chef. Said, "What's that green stuff that you eat it and it clears your head?" Oh, wasabi. So it's perfect. Clears your head, spices up your campaign.
What a fantastic name for a company. Loved it the first time I heard it. I thought, yes, that's exactly on point. Now, for people that are out there who are thinking about getting into business with a friend or someone that they admire or inspire to be around, what kind of advice would you give them in terms of not all these, friendships and that work out in business? So what are some of the things that you and Michelle kind of sat down and discussed when you first started your journey together?
I love this. I've never been asked this question, and I think it's so important. So yes, Michelle and I were friends before that we got into business, but our relationship is based on the business, not the friendship. So why it's actually worked is because Michelle and I are actually opposites. And I think that that's really important when you're picking your partner. I think too often people pick similar people. The opposite, really, what she excels in, I don't, and the opposite. So I think when it comes to picking a partner, and I would never go into business by myself, ever. And without Michelle, we would not have seen the success that we've had, for sure. I'm clear about that. Because she does things that I don't do. And I think that a lot of times, solopreneurs, it's very difficult because they're alone and then they have to do everything and wear all the hats. And it's very challenging on all levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. So in terms of, a lot of people would say then, based on you being, opposites attracting and coming into that business environment, how do you manage that when there's two different opinions on things because you see the world in different eyes? Because in a lot of cases that could blow up and be a bad thing, right?
Well, I'm always right.
Hang on, I've got Michelle on the line here. She's just called in.
She'll have an opinion about that, FYI, for sure, no doubt about it. So here's the thing: is that I've got to say, I'm the CEO of the company, and so we actually, even from the beginning, we operated as I'm the CEO.
Right.
She's the chief creative officer. So when it came to business decisions, we discussed everything, and usually then I would take the role there. When it came to creative things, she would always take the lead with there. And that's why, you need you need the opposite, and then you need very defined accountabilities, and you need to then empower that person's accountability. Someone needs to be in charge. It just is what's so.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean it's not a partnership, but someone ultimately has to be the one that's driving the ship.
Really,
Yeah.
really love that point because I think there's a lot of situations where, friends or people who think they can run a business together get into that situation and they haven't laid down the framework, the ground understanding, the accountability around who's actually in charge, and that's where it falls over a lot of the time.
I think absolutely, absolutely it's the case. I think it's so important from the very beginning of the relationship. You need to be have those clearly defined and have it be okay with the person and see, are you willing to actually do that? Because, it hasn't always been easy.
Mm,
The journey has that we've had fights,
mm,
just like a marriage. We've had knockdown fights because, well, business is a very intimate relationship. That's another thing you need to know. It's more intimate than a marriage
mm,
because money's involved. And
mm.
whenever money's involved, it can be kind of tricky. So, the good thing is in the money arena, we're neither one of us are particularly attached to money, and that allowed a lot of freedom, I think, also.
Did you
Yeah.
have mentors in the early days in terms of helping you and guiding you as you were starting up in business?
We had a mentor in the publicity arena. Her name was Joan Stewart, the publicity hound. And in the very beginning, we actually hired her to mentor us because Michelle had worked as a publicist. But the reason we hired Joan as a mentor is because she had worked as a journalist, and we really wanted to get into the psyches of a journalist to know how we best could serve them. But as far as business, no, we didn't. We kind of flew by the seat of our pants. I wanted to do it unconventional. I didn't want like business plans and any of that kind of stuff. I'm very unconventional when it comes to business.
Would you that worked for you, but looking back on the hypothetical situation, I guess, but hindsight's always a wonderful thing to have. Would you suggest that people getting into business and starting off that way should get people to guide them as far as mentorships?
I think it is important to have mentors. I think it's really good to figure out what is the mentor that you actually really need, that really is going to support you. And because I think oftentimes people are seduced by business gurus. And what happens is they can then tap into that whole more thing that we're talking about, which can lead to really them not creating the business that leaves them satisfied and fulfilled.
You raise something that I think is also important around being authentic and honest with yourself about your own weaknesses and shortcomings, right? Because unless you're
Yeah.
prepared to do that, then you can't find the right people to come in. Now,
Yeah.
Wasabi is an organization that lives to launch conversations that make a difference in the world. I love that. Now, tell us how you do that.
Well, in our ethos as a company, we believe conversations change everything. And the quickest way to change a conversation is really through the media. It's really through PR. So our clients are really interested in shifting the cultural conversation and really leveraging the media to do that. So our clients, for the most part, aren't in like, creating this massive business and all of that. They really have a very focused intention to make a difference with their message, their company. Yeah.
What makes a great PR company?
So what makes a great PR company for you? Because I do think that PR is like a marriage. So there are some things that you need to look for. One is do they share the same philosophy as you do? It's really important because they're your voice out in the world. So you need to make sure you're on the same page. Number two is I think you need to make sure that they represent people like you. It's not that they're doing the same thing, but it's that kind of, you were saying, that getting authentic about what you really want. Are those the people similar to you? And then another thing, if you're interviewing, looking for a PR company, the fastest way to know if they're a fit for you is what results have they produced recently? And are those results you want? Very quickly.
So, because you've been in the game for such a long period of time, would you say that brands that come and engage with you today, they're more savvy than what they used to be 20 years ago, or is it all relative in terms of evolution of business?
I think more savvy. I think people are actually more awake. So I think that people are clear about what they want, and I think people are also more aware of the urgency. And what I mean by the urgency is I think a lot of people are really feeling that the planet is not heading in a great direction, and there's some urgency to interrupt that. So for the most part, the people that come to us are more compelled to do it because they have that inner calling and they know really now's the time to do that.
That's an interesting concept, because basically what you're saying there, because of the ethos of your business, you're actually attracting like-minded customers. Is that a fair thing to say?
It's absolutely, it's absolutely.
Yeah, right. So in terms of the way that the world's gone in the last 6 months, let's go back, because I want to talk about your business before COVID-19 came along. And I'm sure that, you had all your plans set at the end of last year for a great 2020, and you were going to head in a certain direction. Tell us first of all the plans that you had for 2020 for your business, and then after that, tell us how things kind of changed pretty quickly when COVID was announced.
So the plan for 2020 was was really to keep the ship going. So we're kind of in a unique position where we have a lot of people knocking at our door. So we're in a unique position to find the perfect fit for them and for us as far as customers go. We were touring with different offerings. We hadn't sorted out exactly what the offerings were, but we were looking at toying with other offerings to look to see, can we actually find a hybrid solution for people where we support their team and they do some of the PR. So that's one of the things we were looking at and considering for 2020.
Okay. And then we all woke up one morning and we were told to stay in lockdown, right? So I'm really interested to understand from a variety of different views in terms of how that impacted your business. First of all, there would have been the time where you and Michelle obviously got together and thought, hang on a minute, the world's changing here. We've got to do something with our business. And then there was the customer side of it and what happened to your clients and customers. So first, let's start off talking about your and Michelle's strategic decisions when you started to see what was going on.
So for us, what we knew immediately is that we were going to be really busy. And the reason being is because given the kind of clients that we work with committed to making a difference for people, they're struggling. We knew they'd have a lot to say and a lot to contribute to people with all that they were doing. We knew that this was going to be a turning point. So we actually, for us, were, okay, good. How do we support those clients no matter what they're going through to make the difference? And we thought that the biggest thing would be, not that we would not have people knocking on door, the biggest thing would they be willing, or not, could they actually continue to pay?
Right.
Right. We knew that they'd still want PR given who they are, and they would make that the people would knock. But the question really is what would they be what could they afford to pay given everything that was going on? So in the beginning, we had clients that were, really nervous. Some suspended their campaign, some renegotiated their retainers. So in the beginning, there was a lot of that, but it was mostly the uncertainty of money. Right? It wasn't the work was going to be there, but it was the money that was the most uncertain bit.
Right. Now, you're the CEO of the business and you've got a bunch of employees. So as a leader of the business, how did you take on those first few days and weeks when it came to taking care of your staff and managing that whole emotional roller coaster?
So that was the tricky bit, right? I was not as concerned, truthfully, for Michelle or myself because I live a very simple life. So I knew I didn't need a lot to survive. And so, but I was concerned about the people because, they've got kids and they've got other worries and concerns. So the biggest thing was really just what I did was really calming nerves and being with their fear and their anxiety and best we could to reassure them that we're like all in this together and we will do everything possible to make sure that, we support them in their lives. And that was the place where I made the biggest contribution, I say, was calming nerves. Just that, look, we're in this together and we will do it. We've got your back and we will do everything possible to make sure that you're taken care of because we're family.
Yeah, absolutely. How many work for the company in total?
14.
14, okay. So it's an intimate family as well with that size of business, right?
It is a very intimate bit. Yeah, it really, when I say that lightly, I don't mean like, I don't mean that lightly. We really are family.
Mm.
Like we know the kids. Most of the people that have worked with us have worked probably close to a decade now. We don't have turnover.
Mm.
So these are people that we've watched their kids grow, that we've been together, for 10 years. So we are a family for sure.
Yeah, that's significant. Now
Yeah.
you're in a fairly unique position because you would have seen your clients' business strategies unfolding in front of you when it came to how they were tackling COVID-19. So can you give us a few variations on how some of your different customers, obviously without naming them, took on COVID-19 and what you saw from a management point of view?
Well, so what I found really fascinating is all of our clients really stepped up to the bat, and they had to do things that they've been putting off not doing. Like for example, going online. We had clients that their primary business was offline, and they had to very rapidly transition to online. So in a lot of ways, it was really great because they're actually confronting the things that they need to do, which ultimately I think were very important for their business. So we've been very fortunate in that most of our clients, there was that 2 week of, oh my God, and then everybody got back to business. And then since then, it's actually been really great for all of our clients. I don't think any client is not thriving, actually.
Mm. That's been a phenomenal thing out of this whole process, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's really two distinct sides of COVID-19. There's the unfortunate and tragic fact that people are dying and there's a lot of people
Yeah.
and families that are affected. But there seems to be this upside as well in terms of one of the things that you just mentioned. People in their business have been able to hit the reset button and do some of those things that they should have been doing some time ago, right?
I think it's great, and I think it's an opportunity. You're right, it's devastating on one side, and then the other, though, I think it has us stop and really question what's important for us. And really, I think it's having us really focus on what's important. And when we do that, then I think we are really successful.
Mm.
Yeah.
What leadership skills have you seen come to the fore during COVID-19 times, both in your own organisation and also externally within your customers' organisations?
The big one, I think, is really authenticity and compassion.
Mm.
Uh, People are being very authentic about more so than I've ever seen. So people are having very authentic business conversations. It's fine for people to actually say, I don't have my shit together. Because in business, we mostly gloss over it, right? We try to look pretty. We we shower for the camera, the right backgrounds and everything like that. But in this, there's been a lot more space to be human. And I think in that space, there's an opportunity to provide more true leadership.
Mm.
And that's human to human. And then I think there's a level of compassion. Because, we've never known what people are going through. So, but with this, it's like you can almost assume that they're going through a lot. So we give people a lot more compassion. Yeah.
Mm.
Which is lovely.
You've been in business a long time. Have you seen anything like this before in terms of the impact on a business?
No, I've never seen anything like this. I think this is going to change life as we know it forever. Life will never go back to the same. And I think it is, I love that you said that it's a time to reset. This is our opportunity to reset, to change some things that really aren't working, on the planet. It's really time. And I'm hoping that this is the wake up call for that.
Yeah, I want to dive into that a little bit more because we talk about it being the time and we talk about this is our opportunity. Are we seeing enough change though? Are we seeing industries change? Is the PR industry changing as a result of this opportunity we've got to reset everything?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'll give it back to you. What do you think? Do you think that it is that we are?
Well, I think in terms of, is it too soon to tell really? what's, as you just said before, the timeline on this is infinite. We don't know what the new landscape's going to end up looking like, and we don't know when that's going to kind of come to fruition, do we? We're kind of in this vacuum at the moment. And one of the other things that's driving that is, I'm talking to you today, you're in Europe, you've got a business in the United States. Tomorrow I'm talking to somebody in Japan. Country by country are going through different stages and different processes with this whole COVID-19 experience, but at the same time we are connected. So I don't have an answer either to say it in a short sentence, but I guess in terms of, I'm seeing some industries, and I guess the airline industry is one of them, that's been put into absolute turmoil. And it's having a massive impact on manufacturers of aircraft, on travelers, on holiday makers, on business people, on suppliers within the aircraft industry, all those sorts of things. So there has to be drastic change within an industry like that. But I guess I was asking you from the point of view, has the PR industry got other core foundational issues that can be sorted out now because of this? And I look at fake news being one of those things, because I think people are looking for more authenticity, as you said before. And are we going to see that, from brands and from PR agencies?
I think we are. So I think that the industry is definitely going to change, and I do think that you've hit the nail. People are really hungry for authenticity, and I think that they're having to navigate the water on their own instincts, what they trust, right, rather than listening to the news. So the industry is in upheaval. I mean, I can't tell you our job. A lot of the media now have been furloughed. Most of the venues are on really skeleton crews. O Magazine, which is one of the dominant media venues, is looking about changing their print schedule. It's a different world, and the media is evolving. How it's going to turn out, I don't know, but I don't know how you kind of recover from the damage that's been done around the fake news conversation. That is something that. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, sure. Now, during this time, we've seen an incredible amount of innovation. I think I talked about that a little bit earlier in terms of, a lot of the inspiring things that are happening. I'm thinking of one man in particular that's sending rockets up into space, into the space station, and plans to go to Mars and all the rest of it. Have you seen such types of innovation within the PR industry over the last few months? Are there people doing things now that they weren't doing before?
They are. So the PR industry, what's interesting is it's changing and it's morphing. So it used to be very clear that there was owned, earned, and paid when it came to media, right? Mm-hmm. The lines are getting blurred. So media outlets are actually going to what we call pay per play, where people are actually paying for placements. So the lines are getting blurred. I don't know what that'll ultimately mean, but that will be an interesting on. But that's changed dramatically because that's what media need to do to stay in business.
Let's talk about new mediums, because I'm in one of them. The podcast industry has taken off during COVID-19, and I've been fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time, and I've witnessed doubling and tripling of my download numbers in the last few months as a result of people being at home looking for content to consume. And what a greater way to do it with podcasting. So do you see podcasting as something that brands are going to become more and more engaged in?
I do. The reason that I think that they will become is because they are a lot more authentic. They're a longer format, and so people that want to invest in getting to know and really diving into conversation, the longer form formats are actually ideal for that. And the truth is the great thing about podcasts is they have other ways for revenue streams, right? So they're not beholden to advertisers.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more freedom and creativity and flexibility when it comes to the new media that I think will ultimately be very important. Yeah.
Plus, we're seeing some phenomenally exciting things within the podcast industry. I've only got to mention the name Joe Rogan and talk about what's happening with Spotify and those platforms, which, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, were not even on the radar. And now we're seeing whole new ways of not only digesting but also revenue generating and income for podcasters, right? So it's a
It's
very
great.
exciting space. Absolutely. Many of the brands that you work with, do they have their own podcast shows and episodes that they're getting out there?
They don't. Mm-mm. Most don't. A few
Okay.
do, but most don't. Yeah, most don't. I think it's a great venue. I think it's a great way to get your message out there. But as you know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, that people think, oh, you just throw a podcast up there. No, it's a lot of the resistance for a lot of the clients is the amount of time and energy that goes into producing a great podcast. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, you're right. And I think what we've seen is, whilst we've seen an upsurge in the number of new podcasts coming into the marketplace, I would challenge everyone to look at the marketplace again in 6 months' time and see how many of those
Yep.
have potentially fallen out. But that's the way business works, and that's the way it should work as far as, the opportunities that exist there. So,
Yeah.
so looking at the crystal ball, you've got the crystal ball out, and Wasabi's looking ahead to 2021. What's going to be in place for you and your business? Is it a case of just riding the wave and keeping it going, or do you have any other initiatives planned?
So I am really committed to finding that hybrid. So I'm really committed to finding that place where, because a lot of people don't have the budget to hire a PR company. They're costly. There's a lot of work and energy that goes into it. But there are pieces of a PR campaign that you can actually hire that you fill in the gap, and then you or your team can take the ball and run and do your own PR campaign. I'm really committed to figuring that one out. We've got some offerings now that look like they're going to be really, really successful. But that's what I'm really committed to, because we can make a much bigger difference by empowering people to do PR than us doing PR for them.
That's interesting. I had someone on my show the other day, a CEO of an outsourcing company, and she was going the other way and saying a lot of businesses are getting rid of activities and giving them to other organizations to manage. Is there a opportunity there for a third party to come in and maybe manage the PR in a different kind of way?
Absolutely. So here's the thing. Yeah, we've trained people to actually like admin assistants. So absolutely, there's a huge opportunity for people that want to come in and do that. And PR is not rocket science. That it just takes, knowing what to do. But, you get the right mentor, and absolutely. And I think it's great. Whatever we do, it's really, I want to find a way to empower more people that share our ethos to get out there and really change the conversation. Because the more conversations we have out there, the more it changes.
Yeah, totally right.
Yeah.
Collaboration's a word that's thrown around a lot, particularly at the moment with organizations looking at how they can, leverage the opportunity to work together to like-minded skills. Is that something else that you're doing within your organizations, looking at collaborative opportunities, innovative partnerships?
We're not actually. We're not looking at that. It's not that we would be opposed to looking at that, but we haven't. Collaboration is really interesting, and the reason is mostly people that approach us about collaboration. It's about it, at the end of the day, it's really about making more money, and we're really about making a difference. And sometimes those go hand in hand, and sometimes those don't.
Yeah, fair way of
You
looking.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It really is. So that's been the challenge with collaboration. So, we've been around the block. We have enough. We're an established brand. And I love the idea of collaboration, and we have collaborated. But finding those people that are ultimately, at the end of the day, have enough themselves, and then really are looking, okay, how do we collaborate to have a bigger impact? That's what excites me. How do we collaborate to have more clients and more money in the door? It just doesn't excite me.
Yeah.
The money handles itself. For me, I just believe the money handles itself, and it always has, and it always will for us. I have no doubt about that. So that's been the real rub when it comes to collaborations, is finding people that share that ethos.
I love that though, because it's really important. And I guess in terms of just sticking on this for another 30 seconds is the relevance between like-mindedness in terms of the vision you have for your company and where you want to go with the company. So if you do have someone come along and say, look, we're also trying to make a difference in the world, this is our
Yep.
strategy and we'd like to explore some collaborative opportunities, then maybe the door's open for that conversation, right?
Absolutely. No, no, if you're like, yeah, look, I have enough. That's first and foremost. I have enough. I don't need any more. And what I mean by enough, it doesn't mean that you don't have to make money. It's a fundamental way of being. You're not like in that more game, the abundance, that one. And then you come and knock on and say, great, I see us working together makes a bigger difference. I am all in on that conversation.
I've had a I've had a word coming at me more times than I wish to hear it on the show recently, and
Yeah.
it's a word that I think's being enlightened by business owners and business leaders across the world, and the word is pivot. And I've heard the word pivot more times than I ever wish to hear it again on the show. But what's your history with the word pivot? Where did it come from? Have you heard the word pivot around a lot?
Yeah, well, one of our clients, Adam Arkell, actually had his book was called Pivot, and he introduced that 3 or 4 years ago, and it wasn't much in the vernacular. And he actually was the first time I had really heard it, and now it's in the vernacular. But he was the one in his book that really distinguished what does that really mean to pivot. And I think that people use that word just flippantly almost, but it really is if you get into really the distinction of what it means to pivot that he did in his book, then there's something really valuable. And I don't know if people are just throwing like they do, right? Like transformation, all those kind of words, they become in the vernacular and people just throwing them out without really getting to the heart of what that word really means. Yeah. Yeah.
Do we see a lot of companies pivoting today? Is there a lot of companies that are out there having to change, big direction during these times?
To be honest, no.
No. Mm.
So for me, it's kind of like, how do we do business differently to survive? Very few people are really willing and to confront what does it really mean to pivot. It's not like, oh, hey, I'm just going to pivot. It means literally altering your ethos, everything, your fiber of being to really, for me, that's what pivot means. Like really to pivot in a whole different direction. And most people are unwilling to do that work.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call.
Yeah. Yeah.
My last question today is based around there's a lot of companies out there that are struggling, a lot of people in the business leadership roles that are struggling. What kinds of advice would your few tips that you can pass on to them in terms of giving them some inspiration as we head further into COVID-19?
I think it is for me to surround your self with people that give you energy, and surround your life with those things that give you hope, give you energy. And I mean that everything. So, whatever is sucking your energy or taking your attention, try to replace that with things that really inspire you, light you up and turn you on. And really take on new practices. I really have been, for me, I've been really, this COVID is, I was gonna alter my diet. I was gonna pivot around my diet around COVID-19, and I was gonna really get fit. And I've been working. I've not stopped working out. Now it's changed from online working with a trainer and everything. It's changed, but that was my commitment, and I think that that's really important. Those practices that give you energy and hanging around people that turn you on.
Such an important part of business success is around having those positive support networks in place, isn't it? It's so underrated in terms of
It's
how important that is.
It's everything. I can't remember who said that your net worth is a combination of the 7 people you hang around the most.
Yeah, who
Yeah,
was
yeah,
who was that?
I can't remember who that was, but you can do that with anything. Your mental well-being, your happiness, your satisfaction is a culmination of probably the 7 people you hang around the most. So look and see who you're hanging around, and really hang around people that are positive. And then, I know as a PR person, turn off the TV.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, really, don't. I mean, get informed by the news, but people are addicted to it. Turn it off. Get what you need. Get out, and then listen to this, like this podcast, or inspirational things rather than the news. That, I think, if I could say anything, stop watching the news, except, check in every so often.
Yeah, fantastic pieces of advice.
Yep.
Drew, it's been wonderful having you on the podcast today and allowing you to share your wonderful tips and pieces of advice. If you're out there watching or listening today, I'm going to be putting the contact details for Wasabi Publicity in the show notes of the podcast today. So if you do want to reach out and say hello to the team over there at Wasabi, you'll know that they've got your back and they're looking at everything in a very authentic way. Drew Gerber, thank you for sharing on the Global Business Podcast today.
My pleasure. Thank you.